I think you have just made this one of the all-time most impactful episodes
Don't make me
that
cry,
I've had.
Patty. Thank
For
you.
reals. Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD. Today's very special guest is AJ Locascio. Did I say your last name right?
Locascio like pistachio.
Locascio. Right on. I love pistachios. So I met this dear woman on LinkedIn. She runs a neuro organization just to support those of us who are neurodivergent or with all manner of neurodiversity called Umbrella US.
ND now.
I like
I
that.
know. We
Okay.
had to change because of there was a organization that years and years ago took Umbrella US, but they weren't really using it. And we couldn't get the umbrellaus.com. We had .org and all of the other dots, but not .com. And then they called one day and said, "Hey, we want this."
Yeah.
I'm like, "You guys are a big organization. We can't fight that. So here you go."
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Well,
Umbrella ND.
I
And
know
we
how
love
that
it.
goes. One of the first few episodes in my new series that is every other week
Yay.
that will run at least through 2026, where we do deep dives into some of the challenges that neurodiverse people may experience. You know, and as I learned in studying FASD, any of the quote unquote symptoms are things that everybody does. Everybody.
Yeah.
But it's a matter of how often, to what extent, how troublesome is that in terms of consequences in our life, how our life plays out because of it, how disruptive that challenge is. And that's what makes it an issue that needs support. So today, the challenge that you and I kind of settled on doing is emotional regulation, you know, that ability to be quote unquote in control
Yep.
of how we are responding to the world around us emotionally. What are some of the things that can knock us off kilter and get us going into survival mode instead? And what are some things that we can proactively do to help decrease the frequency that happens, or if we are a loved one supporting someone, whether it's with FASD or autism or ADHD or any other type of neurodivergence.
Right.
What are
Stroke,
some?
TBI, cerebral
Yes.
palsy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some things that we can do to better support our loved ones who have some differences? So why don't we start our conversation this morning, AJ, with you sharing a little bit about yourself and what brought you into supporting this community of neurodiverse people, and you know what your story is, and also, of course, about your organization.
Sure. And all of that just flows together. So yes, I am AJ Locascio, and I am the founder and executive director of Umbrella ND. The big legal name is Umbrella Alliance US Inc. That's just too much to say. We go publicly by Umbrella ND.
Can I interrupt for a second?
Yes.
My name in California of my business, Patricia Kasper, MA, MTH, training services. I'll say, it's like, really?
Yeah.
They need to, there needs to be a class out there on how to come up with a good business name.
Well,
Just
maybe
saying.
that's one of the things that we'll put on our
There you go.
companion website that's going to
There
go
you
with the
go.
book that we're writing right now. Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be something great. We can talk about that. So first I want to say people might think that I'm sick or that I have a cold when they listen to me talking and they hear me coughing or clearing my throat a lot. I actually have an airway disorder that is called subglottic stenosis that causes that. So I know, honestly, I know it can be a little bit annoying. It can be a little bit exhausting to listen to somebody trying to get air and talk all of the time. So I recently had surgery for that, and I am actually doing very well. So if you have a lot of empathy, which many of our community does, do not feel bad for me. I am perfectly fine. This is my normal. I am used to it. So I may cough or mute my mic so that I can cough fairly frequently. With that being said, also I move a lot. I am ADHD and autistic and have other neurodivergencies as well, migraine being the one that is most disabling for me, which I may have under control now. Yay.
Fingers crossed.
I
Fingers
know. I've
crossed.
been working
And
hard over the last couple of years on
I'm
that.
actually in the coming month, I hope, going to be recording an episode on FASD and migraine.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing because it
Yeah.
is they go together.
Yeah.
So, I move a lot. I will try to not move in multiple different ways. That might be a little annoying to watch. And yeah, I have my little froggy to keep me when my dog is not on my lap. I have my frog on my lap instead. So, about me, I got into this because I was a middle school teacher and then I was working my way up to principal. I noticed that the adults struggled in supporting the students, not
Mhm.
because they didn't love and care for them, but because they were dysregulated themselves for
Yes.
so many different reasons. Number one being there's not necessarily a lot of support for folks in education, and it's a hard job. And so, as I was noticing that, and if people would come into my classroom and say, "Oh, it's so calm in here. Your classroom is so serene." And well, I had a trampoline and I had carpets and I had Velcro under the tables and I had
Mhm.
swirly chairs and yoga balls and lamps. I never used the overhead lights. I begged my students to not wear cologne and stuff like that in the classroom. And they were
Yeah.
really great about not doing that. And so I started noticing.
So let me interrupt that for just a quick second. So don't do cologne or perfume. That speaks to
Oh, big time. Yeah.
the sensitivity to smells. Does that trigger migraines
Oh, yeah.
for you?
For
Okay.
me, it is a huge trigger. I can just walk by somebody who has strong perfume on,
Mhm.
and then an hour or 2 later, I'm seeing the,
The
you
aura.
know,
Yeah.
aura, and
Yeah.
it's coming. My dog is telling me like, "Hey, you need to take your medicine."
Yeah. So you have a migraine support service dog.
I do. I
That's
do.
awesome.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's fantastic. We noticed that he can give me like up to 2 days before I really have a big
Mhm.
episode. He's able to tell me and let me know so I can
Yeah.
take my medicine.
Yeah. That's
Yay.
amazing.
Yeah. So, um the 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 teachers were struggling, I noticed, and the more they struggled, the more the students struggled, and it affected the culture of the entire school system. And we had to move out to California because my husband was a Marine at the time. He's a disabled vet now. So we moved out to California, and I had the opportunity to do something that I said I was going to do when I was 15. And that was to go back to school, became a board certified sexologist.
Okay.
Now, you're like, what does that have to do with teachers and helping them? A lot of people think that the work that I did as a sexologist was talking about sex all of the time. And I'll tell you, it was 95% about communication, sensory processing, and environment, and
Okay.
5% sex. The people who were naturally coming to me happened to be neurodivergent and queer. A lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them.
Mm, mm,
And so I started noticing, okay, well, I did this originally to help teachers, and I was, working with a lot of Marine moms whose
mhm.
kids were going off to the Marine Corps because mine did. And it just and so I started noticing patterns. Huh, imagine that. So I started noticing these patterns, and I was like, there are not resources out there for
Mhm.
adults who need these resources.
Yeah.
And I am in a position where I can start providing some of those,
Mhm.
as well as unsiloing
Mm.
everything. Because as you know, there are people talking about FASD, then there's autism, then there's multiple sclerosis, then there's Down syndrome, and they're in all of these different places.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
exhausting if you have co occurring conditions
Yeah.
or co occurring intersections, whatever,
Yeah.
people want to
Yeah.
want to name it. This isn't about getting into an argument about what something is called.
Yeah.
But
And I appreciate that. I think a lot of times we really trip ourselves up with an overemphasis on language.
mhm,
It distracts our focus from support.
It does. It
Yeah.
does.
I want to just pause again because I'm wondering if people in the audience, whether they're watching or listening, will be curious about multiple sclerosis and neurodivergence because we're accustomed to thinking about it only in terms of physicality. So can you speak to that a little bit more?
I can a little bit.
And I
So,
know it's off topic, but I just want
well,
to.
it is, but it isn't because we become very dysregulated when we hear a word that we don't like. So, if we can become, our co-founder Jessica Johns, her entire life kind of revolves around curiosity
Mhm.
being greater than judgment.
Yes.
And right? So at Umbrella, we really like to be anti-binary, which means
Mhm.
we're not going to pick one side over the other. We're going to
Mhm.
say, how can we talk about this with both sides? And how can we be a community together,
Yeah.
even if we may not agree on everything?
Yeah. Yeah. I love
We
that.
truly want to be able to speak across the entire spectrum.
Mhm.
And so, okay, the question was how might folks understand multiple sclerosis as a neurodivergent?
Yeah.
It affects the nervous system.
Okay.
So, neurodiversity, we're talking about the brain, which is part of
Mhm.
the nervous system.
Uh-huh.
And we're talking a lot about nervous system dysregulation with these things. And it happens in a way that we become different than
Mhm.
that tiny little 1%. If you imagine a bell curve, I'm going to try not to get too technical here, but if you imagine a bell curve, you've got that 1% at the very top of the bell curve.
Mhm.
And then you've got, 49.9% on one side and 49.9% on the other
Yeah.
side. Honestly, everything that's not that 1%, everybody who's outside of that, they have to think and work and spend energy and effort to have the same,
As if they're in that 1%.
yes, to be able to access the things that that 1% can. And
Yeah.
that, because we have to change our brain and change our thinking, that creates a neurodivergence.
Yeah.
So
And a
I
lot of
am
exhaustion.
a lot of exhaustion. So
Yeah.
the further you get away from that, the more energy you have to expend.
Yeah.
And of course, that's context specific. In one context, we might be closer, and in another context, we might be much further away. That's what
Right.
we're really trying to help people understand at Umbrella, and why we are saying we must unsilo this and we
Mhm.
must come together as multiple communities and have this conversation, because it's
Yeah.
really a conversation about privilege. It's really a conversation about access. It's really a conversation about economic security, because the further we get away from that 1%, the less of all of those things we have.
Yeah.
There are really more of us. And if we start working together, we are the majority. We're not a 20% minority.
Yeah. That's
We are
that's
the
very
majority.
that's very true, but it takes a lot of training for us to make that paradigm shift
Yes.
and see ourselves as part of the majority
Yep.
instead of being part of the minority. Human nature tend to, think, we tend to assume everybody sees things the way we do.
Yeah.
That's just human nature. But, think of growing up if you have siblings. You and your siblings can witness the same event, be part of the same event, and walk away from that with completely different impressions, which turn into completely different memories.
And each one of those people, that's their truth.
Their perspective.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's their perspective, and our
Yeah.
perspective tells us our truth,
Yeah.
right? And that's why my truth may be different from your truth. And I'm working on my doctoral in business administration right now. And actually, the very first article that I get, when you go into a class, you're like, is this going to be a bunch of stuff that I already know? Is this going to be a waste of time? Or is this going to be a real, true, wonderful learning opportunity? The first article I get is on ontological humility, which is just talking about what we were just talking about, being able
Mhm.
to understand that there are multiple truths and multiple perspectives,
Mhm.
and being able to work within all of those. So, of course, that works within my value system, curiosity being the number one thing. And thank you, Jessica, for that. So, when we're looking at neurodivergence, we have to look at that and be able to see the many multiple layered perspectives of the people within our community.
Yeah.
And my goal at Umbrella is to not be needed anymore.
Right? Thank
Yes,
you. Yes.
I want us to become obsolete
Yeah.
because neurodivergence no longer exists.
Yeah. Yeah, that's supposed to be the aim of everyone in the medical profession, everyone in social services, and everyone in mental health. We're supposed to want to put ourselves out of business.
Yep. Yep. And I always
Yeah.
said that when I was coaching, I talked to my people right up front and I said, this is not meant to be a long-term relationship. My goal is to get you out of here as quickly as possible within a comfort level for you, because sometimes people are coming to you after years and years and years of therapy, right? And that leads them to thinking that maybe that's going to happen as a coach.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think we can take care of this in 3 visits. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And that becomes very uncomfortable. It creates
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance. We're talking about dysregulation today. They become very dysregulated. And there we are in the very first meeting talking about, okay, how can we get regulated so that we can move forward?
Yeah. So we kind of mentioned at the beginning, emotional regulation is that ability to be quote unquote in control of how we are affected by our environment, on a feeling basis, and how to balance our emotional responses with our ability to rationally make decisions and take rational, purposeful action in response. But because we are often the victims of microaggression growing up because of our differences,
Mm-hmm.
we have, if you think of the old cartoons like with Roadrunner and Coyote, they often had a stick of dynamite with a long fuse.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of those microaggressions shortens that fuse.
Yes.
And you never know when it's going to be that proverbial last straw before whoop, we're in a state of alarm.
Yep.
Because that panic part of our brain, which is trained to recognize threats
Mm-hmm.
and lack of safety, will read into situations where there may not be any legit threats. Will incorrectly have us on the defensive and acting up and acting out oftentimes in terms of fight, flight, freeze, or fawning. A lot of people don't recognize fawning as one of our defensive strategies, but if you think about maybe domestic violence relationships, women are trained to do a lot of fawning. I'll give you what you want. I'll do whatever you say. Just,
Keep the peace. Yeah.
let me be safe.
Yeah.
And that's a little off topic, but the ability to recognize what kinds of situations are going to cause us to be dysregulated is a skill and a strategy that we need help developing because of all those microaggressions and because of major trauma as well. You can't be in the foster care system without untold traumas,
You
going on
can't
in your.
watch the news today without trauma.
Yes.
I mean, truly,
Yeah.
truly, this is something in
Yeah.
our current climate.
Yeah.
Every day
Yeah.
you have a good chance of being exposed to trauma if you're
Yeah.
paying attention to what's happening in the world around you.
Yeah. And on both sides of the aisle,
Absolutely.
the news is very triggering.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's affecting families, it's
Mhm.
affecting entire communities
Yeah.
in various ways. Regardless of
So
what your political views are, you're
right,
dysregulated right now.
right. So what are some what how do you see in my specialty, I'm focused primarily on the effects of prenatal alcohol exposure.
Hmm.
And the fact that from the time of that initial exposure, our brain is wired such that the fuse gets shortened substantially to
Right.
that survival reaction. It's reflexive. How is dysregulation experienced in other types of neurodivergence from all the different people that you've worked with at Umbrella? Do you see differences maybe between those with autism, those with ADHD, those with cerebral palsy or TBI, car accidents, strokes? I mean, how do you see any differences play out
There
among
are there
our
are definite
various
there are
populations?
definite differences. There really are, especially if you have grown up and you've had these experiences since you were young, and maybe you knew when you were young what was going on. The experiences that you're having there compared to maybe somebody who has been late diagnosed, or even more somebody who maybe has had a stroke,
Mhm.
and now they went from being very funny and quick-witted and outgoing to having to take a long time to process and feeling depressed and being dependent on others to be able to go out of the house. Those are vastly different experiences. And I will say the one thing that kind of stretches across the board for everybody is our sensory environment. Our sensory environment, how did we go all of these years without having conversations about this? Why is this not part of curriculums in
Yeah.
schools? You know,
Why are they still putting fluorescent lights in schools?
absolutely. Why are they not
Yeah.
pay one of the studies that I did was how the effect of air in the
Mhm.
classroom affects students' learning. And so I brought in air purifiers and had my door shut, right? And
Mhm.
it made a difference. It made a
Yeah.
difference. And
Yeah.
so why are these things just being talked about now? And even more importantly, why are they still being ignored in schools, in public places?
Office
uh,
buildings.
Office build yeah, it doesn't matter. Fluorescent lighting shouldn't exist. I don't know a single person who likes it.
Yeah. Yeah. I would love to see, what do they call you can buy light bulbs that emit the same benefit that sunlight does.
Right, right. You
And
can,
that will knock down cases of depression as well,
right?
especially
Because
those who have seasonal affective disorder.
yep, yep, and we're stuck inside all of the time because
Mhm.
work and capitalism, right? Yeah, that's so the sensory thing, and that's one of the big things that I wanted to talk about today because it's something that everybody can have some control over. And most of us have no idea what our sensory profile is.
So how can the audience find out what their sensory profile is?
You know what? I am actually working on a thing right now. I've put it together and I've had it for years, but I only used it in my coaching and I didn't
Yeah.
have, like a public access to it. So this is one of my
Honestly, folks, I did not know this. But if I had, I would have plugged it on purpose.
well, this is one of my personal projects that I work on,
Yeah.
personally because I think it's important and I love it. You could call it a special interest or whatever. But it's something that I noticed was important with students when
Mhm.
I was teaching. It's why my classroom was set up the way it was. It's why, when those teachers came in, they were like, oh my gosh, it's so wonderful in here and it's so
Yeah.
peaceful and calm in here. Um, so yes, it's something that I've cared about for a long time. You can go online and you can find sensory assessments. The
Okay.
biggest problem is that most people um think that there are just the five senses,
No,
right?
that's just
But
5 external. There's a lot of internal senses too.
exactly, and it's those internal senses
Yeah.
really that we need to pay attention to and we need
Yeah.
to understand. Again, as a sexologist, I actually did a whole evaluation for occupational therapy
Mhm.
and would work on that with my clients and then maybe say okay, I'm seeing this here and let's work with an occupational therapist together
Yeah.
and see if we can change some things
Yeah.
to get you had a significant back injury and you spend part of your day in a wheelchair and how can we
Yeah.
get you to being able to feel like you felt before. And
Yeah.
again, most of that is sensory.
Yeah.
It's sensory processing, and it might be learning some different sensations that you've not felt before because
Mhm.
you've had an injury or you've had a brain injury, and all of the things that you loved before now just really make you angry
Yeah.
and you experience legitimate rage
Yeah.
when something like that happens. I have the worst misophonia And I've been divorced, and this was actually a big part of my divorce because
Can you explain to the audience
misophonia.
what? Yes.
Yes. So it is literally getting completely dysregulated and very upset at sounds.
Yeah.
And one of those big sounds is eating
Mm,
or mouth noises.
yeah.
So somebody chewing gum, somebody licking their lips, somebody who has a dry mouth and they go a lot, all of those things. It can happen just
Yeah.
talking to somebody and their voice. There were teachers that I've had and I could not focus or do anything in that class because their voice legitimately made me angry. And I'm
Mm.
not talking just like, "Oh, I'm mad."
I
I'm
think
talking
most
rage.
people, yeah, and I think most people have experienced the case where somebody, whether it's on the news or in a movie or, on some kind of media, they hear that person's voice and they just cringe.
Right.
It's like,
Now take
love
that
the
up.
content of what they're saying, but I cannot listen
I
to it.
can't listen to them. And
Yeah.
there are some people who I engage with regularly who they're going to hear this, and everybody who regularly engages with me is going to be like, "Oh my gosh, am I that person?" Patty, Patty, you are not that person.
Right? No, and what I have experienced is the people that, I mean, because people have said to me, and I'm thinking of one particular person, I'm not going to say who it is. Uh, they're like, "Oh, you're so noisy when you eat." And I'm like, I'm not chewing with my mouth open, but that person is completely unaware of their
Uh-huh.
own mouth noises and chewing
Uh-huh.
noises and
Uh-huh.
swallowing noises.
Well,
It's
and I
like,
will tell you,
okay,
I dysregulate myself when I eat.
mercy.
Uh-huh.
That's
Because
not good.
because I love to chew on ice, and I'll hear myself chewing on ice, and I'll be like, "Oh!" And I get angry and frustrated, but
Yeah.
then I want to chew on more ice because now I'm angry and frustrated,
And
and
yeah.
it's very
So
interesting
it
and
dysregulates you and regulates you at the same time.
correct,
Yeah.
correct,
Yeah.
I am a person who I will take a drink, and I will hear it make a noise, and I'll apologize to the people around me, and they're like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, "I just gulped." And they're like, "Nobody heard that but you."
Yeah.
But I heard it and I got mad, and then I assumed everybody around me was frustrated too, so I apologized.
So let me ask you something, AJ. I
Mhm.
have noticed when it comes to sensitivities that they have changed over the course of my life.
Oh, yeah.
For instance, when I was young, I could handle crowds and the jostling and the busyness of the environment and the noise level. I could handle that. In
Uh-huh.
fact, in my teens and early 20s, I embraced it. If dare I date myself, I loved going to the disco,
Yeah.
right? The club. Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yet now I am so sensitive to noises and crowds and busyness. I flee those situations.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Do
So
do you
this
find that across the board that
um
it changes over time?
it does change over time and it changes over context. So not everybody is going to have the experience that you did. If they were exceptionally stressed and had a lot of trauma and that when they were younger, they might have had that aversion to loudness and crowds and that sort of thing because they were exhausted. So this really is based on
Yeah.
brain science, and there's this scientist, I say his name wrong every time. I've got it right here in front of me. Jack, Jaak, Panksepp, Panksepp. He is
Okay.
known pretty well for doing a TED Talk on tickling rat. He
I'm
did
curious. I'm picturing myself reaching into my habit trail and tickling my gerbils when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah. So he did I actually do a presentation on his research that was called Effective Neuroscience: The Foundations of Human and Animal Emotions. And he identified 7 primal emotions. So those primal emotions are seeking, rage, fear, lust, care, panic, and play. When we are younger and in a fairly safe environment and we feel fairly safe and cared for, a lot of the emotions that we are having, if we imagine a balance, we've got the emotions of play, care, and I'm gonna use lust, even though I kind of wish that he would have used a different
word.
word for it. How about we just call this want?
Desire.
Yes, desire and the willingness to go after these things that you desire. Okay. So if we look at those and we have those on one side and those are engaged. So they're down, they're weighing it down, and those are the ones that are engaged. And the other ones are up here in the air. They're not highly engaged. They're panic and grief and fear and rage. And when we're looking at those and they're up here and we're not engaging in them, we have so much more energy to go and be enthusiastic about seeking sensory different things, right? Even somebody, a lot of people will think, okay, but I see autistics who run away from that sort of thing. Well, when we're working with somebody and we're trying to help them be able to be in an environment that has those things, what we're doing is we're trying to help them engage the desire, care, play centers of the brain, right? Well, what if I go into this situation and I role play that I'm somebody else and my role play character, this is a true story, this is what I do. My role play character is going to go to the Marine Corps ball, and this role play character, this is my alter ego, and they're going to be there and they're on the hunt for some kind of treasure hunt that I've set up with my husband that we're going to do while we're at the ball. Okay. Now I can be in that environment without it completely dysregulating me. Am I going to be tired at the end? Am I going to need downtime at the end? Absolutely, I will. But I'm going to go and I'm going to be able to go through this event because I have engaged.
Because you have a focus.
I have a focus and I've engaged those parts of the brain.
Yes.
Isn't that exciting? It's fun and it's brain science. Like, this is legitimately brain science.
Yeah.
We want to know the part of the brain that is being activated. Is it protection or is it connection?
I think you have just made this one of the all-time most impactful episodes.
Don't make me cry,
that I've
Patti. Thank
For
you.
reals. For reals.
Thank you. And I could talk, I could talk about this all day because it's something that, to me, it's logical and it makes sense. It really, truly, that last question that I asked, what part of the brain are we engaging? Protection or connection?
Yeah.
And
if you take someone who's been raised in trauma and abuse and neglect, it's the opposite.
Right. It's the lack of connection, the engagement of protection, and full time being in fear, rage, and panic grief. And what we want to be in is lust, care, and play.
Yeah. And yet, for someone who is neurodiverse but has never been identified as having those needs or as needing accommodations in order to function in our world, they oftentimes, because of what I called microaggressions earlier, in terms of being blamed, shamed, and punished for their differences and for needing supports to do things the way we, quote unquote, should be able to do them in the time we should be able to do them.
Right.
Should, for the audience, is a 4-letter word as far
it
as
is.
I'm
I tell
concerned.
people, do not should all over yourself and don't let anybody else should all over you.
Yeah.
Because
it's covered in shame.
does is it engages the protective part of the brain. Don't tell me how to live my life. That's where we go.
Yep.
Or because we're in fear.
Yep.
We're in fear of upsetting somebody or making somebody disappointed. And then that fear can turn into panic and grief because now we're afraid of losing that person. And that's a disconnection. So we're afraid of losing them. And then if we get backed into a corner, we have rage and we act out.
Yeah. It goes back to fight or flight, freeze or fawn.
And there are a couple more F's in there too.
Please share.
We can also feel or we can fornicate.
Yeah.
And I'm using the nice word there.
Yes. Funny how it could be another 4-letter word.
It absolutely could be. And I am known to use a lot of 4-letter words. That's a way to regulate, by the way. For
It
a lot
is.
of people, like, we are just ridiculous. Honestly, I lived up in
Yep.
Montreal and I noticed that people used curse words a lot, and
Mhm.
especially in the French language. And that particular culture did not get upset when people
Mhm.
use these words regularly in a classroom. I
Yeah.
taught English in a French school, and regularly in a classroom, you would hear a student say, like, I screwed up my test, but the way
Mhm.
they would say it is,
I effed it up.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
they would use that word and nobody cared, right?
Yeah.
But if you're in the English area and somebody uses that word, it is like, whoa, it's a big deal.
So my father fought in just after World War II ended. He dropped out of high school, assuming he would be drafted. He wanted to be able to pick his own MOS or mode of
Yep,
service. So he dropped out of high school and went to airplane mechanic school.
nice.
And then he signed up thinking he would be an airplane mechanic.
Uh-huh.
And no, they had him on bomb disposal in Japan, cleaning up the
Wow.
beaches in the cities.
Wow.
Good thing he was good at his job. But when it comes to this idea of, or this topic of, all the swearing, he said the way to have people pay attention to what you're saying is to not swear in a sentence. Complete opposite. And the other thing I want to say about our use of curse words, no, I know this from, supporting my mother with, who has Lewy body dementia. So I've kind of delved into that population of people who have a lot of needs because of their
That
dementia.
neurodivergent population.
Yes. There's a wonderful, amazing, gifted teacher when it comes to dementia. Her name is Teepa Snow. She's fabulous.
To
So
look her up.
if anyone in the audience has loved ones with dementia, go follow her podcasts. You will learn so much. But she talked about, she was answering a viewer's question. People with dementia will start, like my mother swears all the time, and I was not used to that in growing up.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, wow, you missed your calling. But I can't figure out if you should have been a sailor or an oil field worker or a truck driver, right? But the reason for that is as a child, when we use those words, we get a big reaction from people. Maybe
Uh-huh.
not from our families if our families swear a lot, but if we swear in school, we get a
You
big
get
reaction.
attention. Oh, yeah.
And so that word gets stored, and its context for how to use it gets stored in a different part of the brain than our normal language center. And so when we are losing our ability to use language, we hang on to
We access the language that we can.
we access those parts that are stored in a different place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my son, I always told him when he was younger, I said, "These are words that you can use when you don't have to ask, is it okay to use it?" And that was basically how I, taught him, because I said there's no such thing as a bad word. So there it's context specific.
Yeah.
Can you imagine having me as a mother talking to you when you're 3 and saying it's context specific? But
By
he
the
asked,
way, as a total aside, your son was in the service, your husband was in the service.
both of them
Thank
Marines.
and my dad was a Marine. Thank you, AJ,
Semper
for the
Fi.
sacrifices you made supporting your family
Thank you so
as they
much.
served.
Thank you so
Yeah.
much. They both are wonderful, and honestly, the reason I can do the work that I'm doing right now is because of the work that my husband did to support
Mhm.
us as a family.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
So
My
thank you.
favorite sweatshirt says, "I'm a veteran's wife."
Uh-huh.
Just like a normal wife, but way cooler.
Way cooler. Okay, my son, he's 26
Yes.
now. He wanted to get his ears pierced and he was like 13, maybe 12, 13. I was like, "Sure, yeah, okay." And so we're going in and he says, "Mom, I watched on Mythbusters that you have less pain if you say cuss words. Is it okay if I cuss while I'm getting my ears pierced?" And I said, "Absolutely, that's perfectly fine." We were at a piercing studio, not like Claire's
Yeah.
in the mall. We're actually at a place that
Yeah.
did piercing tattoos. I'm like, these people and anybody in here, they've heard these words before. So he goes to get his ears pierced and he's sitting there and the guy goes, "Okay, take a deep breath." Lance goes, shit, 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 shit. And he looked, he said, Mom, it worked. So that's a way to regulate. And I know
Yeah.
that sounds strange. Have times when you are able to be around people where you don't have to watch your language, truly,
Yeah.
it truly that makes a difference. I have
Well, and
lots
what do we
of,
do when we injure ourselves? What are the words that
right,
come out of our mouths?
right. And what happens if we stop those words?
Yeah.
It
The
hurts
experience of
worse
pain goes up.
because you
Yeah.
have nothing to focus on except for that pain. You're
Yeah.
now you're focused on not saying a bad word, which is
Yeah.
causing you more pain than if you just
More
said
distress.
whatever word, which is just a bunch of letters stuck together.
Yeah.
And you're
Yeah.
not, you talked about in school, you would get a big reaction. It didn't get a reaction from me at all when somebody cussed.
Mhm.
I could care less if they cussed in my classroom and did we have this conversation? Maybe if we needed to. But that usually was like somebody said something and then they said, "Oh, are you going to send me to the office?" And I'm like, no, I'm not going to send you to the office.
Yeah.
And honestly, I had very little cussing happening in my classroom because it wasn't something that I
Yeah.
cared about as
Yeah.
long as they didn't cuss at somebody in a way that was
Yes.
aggression towards them.
Right.
If
Right.
one time a kid who never, ever, ever raised his hand, never raised his hand, raised his hand to answer a question one day. And I didn't even make students raise their hands. So I don't know why this was a big deal, but it was. And so he raises his hand to ask a question one day, and somebody jumps in and answers that question before him. And he
Mm.
goes, MFer, I raised my hand and everything. Again, he wasn't in trouble.
Yeah.
He wasn't
So
aggressive.
I just had two memories come flitting up from the depths.
Awesome.
One was diabetic camp when I was a kid. There were twice a day we could go swimming, and for, at about an hour each time. And there was one of the boys just bugged everybody. And that particular morning, he was fixated on bugging me. I don't know why. Probably because I was neurodivergent, but
Or he thought you were cute.
could be that. He had, prior to that, I had stepped on a bee and it got infected. And so I'm in the pool and I had lifted myself out on the edge. So I was up on, the edge of the pool on my hands, and I'm about to turn and he grabbed my heel.
No.
So when I turned, I let loose with a very long volley of cuss words, which nobody at camp had ever heard me use. Probably my parents had never heard me use.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah, right? And I remember I kept getting up and I walked down the side of the pool and I climbed the ladder onto the diving board and it was total silence. All eyes were on me and it was quiet, no chatter, no laughter, no nothing. And I went off the diving board and came up and life had gone back to normal. But the pain had stopped. And the other thing, thinking about that student on the playground, probably a year or two before this other incident had happened, there was a kid in school that was one of the bullies. He was the last straw, right? I kicked him in the shin and I had hard soles on my shoe because that was back in the day of saddle shoes.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, ouch. Ouch?
Yes, yes. So he ran and got the playground supervisor, who was he's a sixth grade teacher, and the guy was huge. And he comes over and Kenny was like, "She kicked me." He looked at me and he looked at Kenny. He looked at me again and he goes, "Well, what'd you do to her?"
Uh-huh.
Thank you for bringing those memories back.
You're welcome. You're welcome. They're good. And what we just did actually was we connected,
Mm-hmm.
right? I told a story, you told a story.
Mm-hmm.
That's connection. That's engaging the
Yeah.
part of the brain that gets excited and is seeking new experiences. So, that's awesome. And that's
Yeah.
what we want to do. Connection is definitely a way that people can regulate. Now,
And a way in which we can support people
a
who are
way in which we can
dysregulated.
support people. Now, a lot of people will say, okay, but I know this person and they're introverted and they like to be alone. Connection can definitely happen even when when you're alone.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily love to be around people. I know I was a middle school teacher, whatever. I know I can get up in front of an audience of 1,000 people and talk. Yes. And I feel connected to those
Mhm,
people. I feel less connected to those people when I sit down with somebody one on one. That to
mhm.
me feels like there's a wall in between us and I don't know
Yeah.
you and you don't know me. And honestly, to have another person in my life who I have to get to know is exhausting and, all of these things. But
And
connection,
I was just saying in another episode I recorded the other day that in the podcast, I seem very confident, right? Very extroverted. But if you put me or in a group of people that I know, I'm that same way.
same.
But if you put me in a large setting where I don't have solid friendships with a lot of the people, I turn into a wallflower. My back's
Yeah.
on that wall. I'm uncomfortable. I can't wait to get out of there
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing how you can feel very alone.
in a crowd.
I should not say alone. You feel we like to
Lonely.
be alone. We don't like to be lonely,
Yes. Yes.
right? Because lonely engages fear,
Yeah.
panic, grief, and rage.
Uh-huh.
But if
Yeah.
we are alone and still feel like we are connected, for example, I'm alone in my house, laying in my bed in a dark room because I have a migraine, and my husband is folding the laundry so I don't have to. I feel very connected even
Yeah.
though I'm alone. So I don't
Yeah.
feel lonely.
Yeah.
Versus my husband's angry at me because I can't do the laundry and he's sitting on the couch playing video games or whatever. And I know that when I get up, I have to deal with that and the laundry,
Yeah.
then I feel lonely. Two completely different parts of the
Yeah.
brain that those feelings are happening in.
What a good distinction, and and pointing out that those are two different parts of the brain that are active
Yeah.
is so important
Yep.
because it really brings it back to all of this is neurological.
It is. It is. And I personally like to have this conversation over the think positive conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Think
Think
positive,
positive.
cover it up, deny, dismiss, minimize.
Yeah. Think positive. Deny, deflect. Go
Right?
Marine Corps. Like this is,
Hoo-yah!
yeah. When you're sitting around with a bunch of Marines, you'll hear that every once in a while. Deny,
Mhm.
deflect.
Yeah.
Right. Which part of the brain are you engaging right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah.
Am I engaging the protective part or the connection part? Then it's self-awareness, right? What is the key to becoming regulated when you're dysregulated? Self-awareness. This is why so many folks get upset and frustrated with a lot of the ABA
Oh,
stuff and why
yes.
people are like, let's get rid of that. There is also that part of ABA. Remember, I like to look at the entire
Mhm.
picture. The reason there are some people who like ABA, for example, somebody who I was talking to who was doing some volunteer work at Umbrella, an autistic guy, and he said, well, I had ABA. And when I was 11, I started talking. And I loved my therapist. And I would never want to get rid of that. He is a part of the community, and what he is saying is valid. So
Yeah.
my brain is going, okay, there are some good parts, there are some bad parts.
Yeah.
Well, the good parts are parts that are working on that self-awareness, and
Mhm.
they're not right there. Connection with self,
Yes.
right? There's that
Yes.
connection again, connection with self, self-awareness. What do I want? What do I need?
Yeah.
And what actions am I doing to get it?
Yeah.
And are those actions productive?
Yeah.
Or are they harming
Yeah.
me? Are they harming other people?
Yeah. Because that flip side is that it is still compliance based.
Right, and exactly, when we're in that compliance-based part, when we're
Mhm.
not working on just the self-awareness and doing the
Mhm.
things for that, when it's about compliance and it's about forcing somebody like, I had to sit on my hands. I had to, do these stop kicking your feet, stop moving around, stop swinging around in your chair, stop spinning circles,
Mhm.
all of those things. What part of the brain am I in when somebody's telling me stop, 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 stop? I'm in the
Mhm.
protective part because
Mhm.
I'm afraid I'm going to make somebody angry.
Yep.
I am afraid that I don't know and love myself. I am having panic and grief that I'm going to be left alone and I'm going
Yeah.
to become lonely. And I'm enraged because somebody's telling me how to live my life in a way that does not feel authentic to me.
Yeah.
That's
And
why
because
there is
I
such a
know this is going to work.
exactly. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm self aware enough to know I'm not hurting anybody, all of this. And this is the conversation that we need to be having when we're talking about ABA and what to do with it.
Yeah.
Because right
Yeah.
now it's definitely not going away.
Right.
So what can we
Because
do to
it's
make it
evidence-based.
it's evidence
But the
based?
question is evidence-based for whom?
Yeah. And behavioral analysis is not something that's just used on children and their behaviors in
Mhm.
schools. It's not just positive behavior supports. It's
Yeah.
not just therapy
Yeah.
for autistic kids.
Yeah.
It is, or adults.
Mhm.
It is also used in businesses. It's also used in the justice system. Like there's a lot that needs to be looked at that are positive and a lot more probably that are negative because those
Yeah.
negative things are easier to do.
Yeah. I think part of AB
Let me
it
let
works
me let me
great for some.
correct myself just so people understand. When I say those negative things are easier to do, they're easier to do for the enforcer, not for the
Yes.
person who
Right.
is undergoing
Right.
treatment or therapy.
Right. Yeah, because it supports and is successful for a great many people, but it causes further harm
To a
for
greater
a
many
great
people.
yes. And I think the underlying principle of that is it is part of the behavior paradigm, which I may be overgeneralizing, but the behavior paradigm says that all behavior is intentional. And if you can't quickly see the motivation, then it's secondary gain in air
Mhm.
quotes for those who are listening, not watching. With the behavioral paradigm, it's just a matter of finding the right motivation
Uh-huh.
and the subject, whether it's a child or an adult or an employee or whoever, or a spouse, I mean, whoever, the subject will eventually, when you find the right motivation, make the choices that you wish they would make.
Uh-huh.
But if at the crux of the matter, it's an issue not of won't do what you want them to do, but can't do what you want them to do without additional supports or different approach or more time, whatever the case may be, then it it causes further harm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
If you have a kid in a classroom who is so focused on not moving their hands,
They're not going to learn a thing.
they're not learning anything.
Yeah.
And they are sitting in a heightened state of awareness, but
Alarm.
not in a good way, right? Alarm, exactly. They're sitting in this heightened state all of the time going,
Yeah.
I'm going to get in trouble if I move my hands. I'm going to
Yeah.
get in trouble if I move my hands. This is where
And
CPTSD comes from and why it needs to be in the
yes.
damn DSM.
Yes. And they make it through the school day on a good day. And then when they go home, they lash out.
Yes. Yes.
And the teachers can't figure out why the parents are saying, but blah, blah, blah.
But
We
that
didn't
kid is
see
so,
that.
they're so sweet all day long at school.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. What's going
Yeah.
on? Well, home is their
They're
safe
focused on
environment.
surviving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Home is
Yeah.
the safe or safer. It may not be safe, but it might be
Yeah.
safer
Yeah.
environment for them where they have to, let go.
Yeah. The predictability is there
Yeah.
more so than at school.
Yep. Yep.
Or more so than at work. We talked earlier about how living with wiring in our brains that is different.
Hmm.
It's an energy draw. Like
It's all about energy.
yeah.
Being an
I
advocate or a self advocate is extremely energy consuming. And I
yes.
will say, in the book that we are writing that is coming out soon, and we're going to have our Kickstarter information up on that very, very soon. In this book, we talk about the advocate energy cycle
Mhm.
because every single day, every single moment of our lives, every single day, we are either advocating for ourselves or somebody else. And
Mhm.
that's energy. And
Yeah.
we only have so much of it.
Yeah.
That's why somebody came up with spoon and matchstick theory.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. How many spoons does it take? Right. A quote unquote fully functioning brain, right?
Uh-huh.
AKA one that is wired the way ideally it, here we go with the should word again, should
Yeah.
be wired.
Yeah.
That sucks up 25% of our body's available energy, even though it's only 2% of our body weight. But if we are navigating life with a lot of neurological detours, if you're driving somewhere and the the freeway is closed and you have to follow detours, think of your experience with that. A, it takes longer. B, it takes more fuel. C, it gets my on numbers or less.
It doesn't matter. We got it. We can expend some energy to be with you.
Right. So C, it raises your anxiety, right? Especially if you have a deadline getting where you need to be. By the time you get there, and especially by the time you get home again, your energy is in the toilet. There's nothing left in the gas tank. In fact, a lot of times you run out of gas, right? But if you think about what that means, that parallel, one of my favorite little, had I known this analogy would come up, I would have pulled it up on the computer. But if you think about a battery, the low battery signal is red at the bottom of a drawing of an outline of a battery. And then next to that is a person where the shoes and ankle socks are red, right? What happens when you deplete that little bit? It stops working. And that's our experience oftentimes.
It
if
is.
we
And I like people to hear an actual thing that might happen, because I talk about advocacy all the time, right? So you are your own advocate. You just experienced this detour that you didn't know was coming on your regular route to your doctor's office, where you have to go in and talk about, for the first time, cancer treatment. And by the way, cancer treatment can definitely cause neurodivergence for folks because of the way that it influences the brain. So this is on topic.
and the body.
Neurodivergent folks do get cancer, and we do have doctor's appointments. Same. Imagine if you go to that doctor's appointment alone and you get there and you cannot ask questions. You can't even think about questions. This is why advocacy is so important. And we need something. Now, this is way in the future, but one of the things that we want with Umbrella as we continue this advocacy journey is to be able to train folks to be advocates in their community, where somebody can call and say, I have a doctor's appointment. I have no family in town. I don't really have a friend who can get off work, or I have friends, but they don't really understand how to advocate. Can you go to this appointment with me?
Yeah.
And it's a service offered in the community because people need it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
People
And I've
need
had other people refer to that as being a medical interpreter. Right? Where you are interpreting all the medical jargon. You have that list of questions and concerns that you can present on the patient's behalf, but also you can make sure that all the blanks are filled in. But you're also interpreting the patient's response. And I hate that word patient, but you're interpreting that patient's responses or silences or behaviors, in air quotes, to the doctor.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I work at our local sexual assault center here, and my job as an advocate is to provide the safest space possible for this person who has either just undergone something or in the past has and is addressing it. So sometimes just being there, right? Sometimes just being there is all you need to do, because now this person feels safer. They've got somebody with them who they can look at, who they can hold their hand, who has a bottle of water, who can say, I get the feeling that maybe you didn't understand what that word means. Can we get a definition? Those sorts of things. We all need advocates because advocacy is exhausting.
Yeah.
So
and
that's another way to regulate, right? Have an advocate.
Yeah.
Have an advocate. Who is your advocate? You have somebody to call or to text, or maybe they're in the room with you and you have a signal, and that person is advocating for you. And you know and feel safe that they can do that. That is a way to regulate.
Yeah. And yet it's important to also have conversations prior to appointments about what type of support do you need
100%.
and what type of support would not be supportive.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
because that's going to be uniquely answered by every individual. So, yeah, FASD United just released the first week of January a self-advocacy handbook. So
Fantastic.
for those in the audience who have not seen, there's been a lot of publication about that, or advertisement about that. And I was honored enough to be one of the people with living experience that participated in fine-tuning it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was a real honor. The other piece that I've wanted several times to chime in on, going back to your descriptions of your classroom.
Uh-huh.
A dear friend of mine, Jody Culp, who most of my audience will know, has a book out that's won numerous awards at this point, but it uses fiction to educate the general public on different types
Hey.
of neurodiversity. So there's a couple characters with FASD. There's war-related PTSD, there's ADHD, there's autism, there's many forms of neurodiversity, characters representing many types of neurodiversity in this story. But one of the things that's highlighted is a discussion of the classroom for behavioral supports, right?
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah.
kids that act out.
Uh-huh.
And why the kids who are in that classroom thrive, how their grades end up ratcheting up and making them very successful, but why those kids will sabotage themselves so that they keep getting sent back
Sent
into
to that classroom.
because it's like the detention classroom,
Uh-huh.
right?
Uh-huh.
And yeah, because that's where they experience safety. That's where they experience support. And it has so many of those same things that you shared about how you had your classroom set up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it has the obstacle course. It has, tactile areas, it has lighting options, sound options. And yeah, so if people watching, listening really want an engaging way to learn more where it's less academic, right? This conversation would still be on the academic side of things.
Yeah.
Apart from the stories that we raised, we learn a lot through stories, as we
We
talked
learn
about in the
through
beginning.
stories. Yes.
And this use of fiction is just phenomenal. So I know you have a library at Umbrella. So I would encourage you guys to have this book available. It's called Embracing Zach.
Yeah. I know. I know the book you're talking about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's great. We are building a digital companion site
Yep.
to go with the self-advocacy survival guide. Of course, you and your work are going to be in there.
Yay!
Your book, your podcast, and other things that you might create in the future. Because again, we want to unsilo and make
Yeah.
things available in a space for
Yeah.
people. It's taking a lot of work. We need a lot of support. I will shamelessly ask people to go to umbrelland.org.
I'll have that in the show notes.
Yeah, go there and
Yeah.
donate. $10 makes a big difference.
Yeah.
It really does. And of course, we are a 501(c)(3, so it is tax deductible. And it helps.
Yeah.
We're volunteer run at the moment. The money that we do have is literally for things like Riverside, things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it costs money to put out podcasts, and I know you have one that you air on LinkedIn.
Yeah, we just finished a health equity
Mhm.
podcast, which was really, we focused a lot on folks with multiple intersecting identities. And really, truly, all of the work that we do, we talk about health equity because we call health equity because economic security is that when we're talking about wellness overall, we're talking about regulation and dysregulation. It's that.
Oh,
It is about health equity. When you don't have access to the things that you need as a human being to be
like good
well,
nutrition.
like good nutrition,
Right?
like
And
knowing that
there's
you
so
have
much
money to put gas
disparity.
in the car.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
this, I'm going to have to find this and send it to you because it's so wonderful. It was a worksheet and it was made for women. And it was talking about how women have lower overall wellness because of things like they have less money
Mm-hmm.
And let's
Yep.
go even further than this. A Black woman has less wellness just because she's not able to access money and resources. So if her car gets a flat tire, she knows in the back of her mind every single day when she gets in her car that if she has a flat tire, she doesn't have the ability to
Yeah.
get that tire fixed because she doesn't have
Yeah.
the funds.
Yeah.
And you can go and you can look on the US the government website and look at the economic impact that lack of finance has on people. When you
Mm-hmm.
have people who are regularly up here making,
Yeah.
150,000, and then you look at another group of people and it's 23,000.
Yeah.
Come
I'm
on.
very encouraged that for the last probably 2 years, one thing I'm noticing at doctor appointments and even at subsequent appointments with the same practitioner, there's these questionnaires about these social disparities and
Yes.
economic disparities and safety
Yes.
concerns. And I'm thrilled with that. But AJ, we've been talking for well over an hour
I know, I
at
can't
this
believe
point.
it. And we didn't even get into my whole list of these are the things that you can do to regulate.
So that just
Can I
means
give
I've got to
one
have you back.
Awesome, that would be great. That would be great, but I do wanna give you a resource because
Yes.
people can go in and access these.
Yes.
Emily and Amelia Nagoski, they are twins. They wrote this
Okay.
amazing book called Burnout, and you can go online. I'll give you the link that you can put in, but it's theburnoutbook.com. Get this book.
Okay.
It's amazing. These 2 sisters, when they wrote this book, they did not have, um, autistic diagnoses. They
Mhm.
both now have,
Mhm.
um, diagnoses, so it didn't surprise me at all to hear it because I love them so much. They're my people.
Yeah.
Get this book, look them up online, watch their TED Talk where they're talking about these things because they spend a chapter in
Mhm.
there giving some things that can help regulate
Okay.
so that you don't burn out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's
That's
amazing,
awesome.
amazing, amazing.
Okay. So I'm gonna stop recording and we're going to figure out when we're gonna come back and do more.
Yay! I love that.
Yep, I do too. I knew there was a reason that you were the first person I reached out to when I planned this every other week series.
I'm
So,
so glad because I do think that people forget
yeah.
that I have this. I'm not only an executive director and doing executive director stuff. Like I came to that position because of this knowledge and
Yep.
expertise that I do have.
Yep.
So thank
Yep.
you very much.
You are so welcome, and I'm so honored to have had you on Living with FASD. I can't wait till we sit down again. And yeah,
Always a
thank you
pleasure.
so much.
You bet.
I am so glad that you tuned in to today's candid conversation, and I hope you found it very valuable in adding to the breadth and depth of your knowledge about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. I also hope we made you laugh along the way. I'm so honored to bring you these candid conversations week by week, and I'm so grateful that you keep coming back. You are my faithful audience, and I'm so grateful for you. Please reach out to me at livingwithfasdpodcast@gmail.com. If you have suggestions on topics you want me to cover, that you want maybe to learn more about, or guests that you think would be excellent to invite to be on the show, I'm always happy to get your suggestions. And I'm also happy to hear if any of these episodes have touched your life. Please share your story with me. You never know, I might invite you to come on the show. If you want to pick up a copy of my book, Sip by Sip, Conversations with Adults Living with FASD, you'll find the ordering links in the show notes, along with my Calendly link if you want to schedule a complimentary call to talk about any training or coaching needs that you might have that I might be able to help you with through my company, Casper's FASD Life Coaching and Training LLC. Now, if today's guest has given me contact information to share and you want to reach out to them, that information will also be in the show notes. So in the meantime, I just want to thank you again for taking time out of your busy week to watch or listen to this podcast on whatever platform you have found me on. And please, please, please like, subscribe, and share this podcast so that others can find it. That's how they find it, is when you share it. And, the more people that find the podcast, the more people learn about FASD and the less hidden we are. So that's it for today. It's a wrap. Have a great week, everybody. And we'll see you next time on Living with FASD. Take good care.